Okay, whenever.
Right, we ready? Ta-da!
Right, so thank you for having me, Bal. It's a pleasure being here. So today, based on the brief that you sent me, I'm going to be presenting a magazine that I came up with. My idea was called Vision, and I will explain that in just a minute. So essentially, the genre for the magazine is mainly technology. So I was thinking, you know, the brief said about social media-based audience, YouTube, Instagram, that kind of thing. A younger generation, one that doesn't typically interact with old media. And obviously, social media and a younger generation, all of that encompasses so many different aspects and elements of technology, but I feel that it all comes under technology. And that's the key linking factor with this generation, is being a digital native and having this like interaction with technology as opposed to old media. So I think if we link this magazine in strongly with technology, then it will sell to this kind of audience. I also figured that it would be a good idea to link in sort of another popular genre of magazine, which is sort of the gossip personality type magazine, where it's more focused on figures as opposed to information. So it will draw in both crowds. It will draw in the people who are interested in technology and also the wider audience who's just casually uses technology and is interested in, you know, key figures and what's going on in the world, stuff like that. In terms of content, revolving around these two sort of overarching genres, thinking sort of articles about key personalities, so figureheads in the industries, or maybe influencers, people on YouTube and Instagram, which will probably help bring in audiences, because that is sort of the linking factor again, is that digital natives, YouTube and Instagram generation. If we're interviewing influencers, then they can sort of help to market the magazine and also bring in an audience. Q&A sections as well I thought was a really good way of linking in social media even more. So if we're speaking to a key personality or an influencer, then we can maybe in advance let people know on our social media pages linked to the magazine that, hey, we're going to be talking to this person. If anybody has questions, leave them with a hashtag or whatever at the account. And the most upvoted ones, or the most interesting ones, we will ask the person and put them in a Q&A section within the magazine. I think that will incentivize people to actually buy it. It sort of increases audience participation with the magazine, as well as linking in social media. So if someone left a question on that thread and they wanted to see if their question got answered or what the answer was, then they would naturally want to go out and buy the magazine and see what the answer was. So I feel like that's a good way to drive audience as well. In terms of photography, I wanted to sort of mainly stick with sort of the high-end photography, kind of very simple, like just the figures that we're interviewing, mainly just simple images. I wanted to have sort of like a high-quality feel with a lack of clutter. The thing I've noticed with a lot of technology magazines is they're really cluttered. If you look at a lot of covers for technology magazines, you'll have like lots of different articles going on, lots of pictures. It's all very confusing and it's not very appealing to look at. So I was thinking sort of just like simple, high-end clean photography and clean layouts to make the magazine visually appealing as well as informative, as opposed to just being too cluttered, which is something that I touch on in this section about styling production. Sort of less clutter, more of a lookbook type feel. Double page spreads, main images. Just sort of very, very simple and something, again, that's appealing to look at. So not like having a lot going on one page. If I want to have, say, a main article, then it would take up one page for an image and then one page for the text. Maybe a little bit of bleed over from the two, but nothing too much going on. I was thinking 60 pages per issue. That gives it a lot of content and enough to justify a purchase, I think. And a bi-monthly release schedule will give us enough time to produce 60 pages of consistently good content. I was thinking sort of A4 size roughly, just to keep production nice and simple, and also it's just a nice size to like hold and feel. And Coated Gloss paper to sort of have, again, that high-end, high-quality feel so that it's appealing to someone who wants something visually interesting and something that feels high quality as well as the content being high quality. So these are two sample covers that I came up with. I sort of had again, I was trying to display the simplicity of it, the very uncluttered look as opposed to the cluttered magazines. Just a couple of teased articles here and there, up here and up here, and sort of a main image. I had this idea of the title being in the top right. I think I've included the wrong sample on the right side, but sort of having it on the top right and having the main figure looking up to it sort of represents the idea of vision, in that being people who are looking forward, people who have a vision looking up and to the right is sort of symbolic of that. And again, I did do that with the other cover, but I must have included the wrong one. But again, I had the same thing. And then this tagline here, quintessential technology publication. So I did some spreads to sort of accompany these and to display what I would like the content to look like of the magazines. So this sort of the thing that I was talking about, we've got the sort of, the divider would be in the middle here, and you'd have one page of text, one page of main image, very sort of simple, clean type look. Same thing sort of here, where it sort of bleeds in, and there's a little bit of crossover, but nothing like overlapping or blocking anything. Everything sort of flows in a way that looks appealing. And I've also included Snapchat, a Snapchat link up there, just to display how social media inclusion would work and how I'd include things like Snapchat links. I think Snapchat and QR codes are very good for that, especially in a static magazine, because the technology can actually interact with them very easily. Because you can scan a QR code, you can scan a Snapchat code, and maybe get like some kind of special content for buying the magazine, some kind of filter or something like that. I feel like there are big possibilities with technology like that. And this is sort of an example of a different kind of spread where it's one page is sort of, it could be maybe advertising or it could be sort of linked into the article, but it's more sort of separated. So you'd maybe have an advert here and then you'd have the article that's also related to the advert. Because obviously you want the advertisement to be targeted towards your audience. And so advertising something like this, which can then lead into an article, would be beneficial to both the advertiser and the magazine in a way to make more content and make it look a lot more interesting. So in terms of the audience, the brief says 18 to 30-year-olds, which is a relatively wide margin, and it also specifies the sort of like social media aspect. So yeah, I was sort of thinking that this was quite an untapped market to go into, because again, this market doesn't really interact with traditional media like magazines all that often. So if we can capitalize on that by incorporating social media and getting this audience involved in our traditional media, then it's sort of a goldmine of an untapped market. And I was thinking sort of an ABC1 category, higher class, upper class type audience, just because of, you know, the high quality feel and the sort of subject matter of the magazine. It's all sort of aspirational. So yeah. In terms of team, I looked at team cost and advertising here. In terms of the team, you know, you've got all of the sort of like roles that you would need in a typical magazine. I've listed a few here, so editors, columnists, all of those sorts of roles. And that's all stuff that would go in because it is quite article heavy, so you would need proofreaders as well as people to design the layout of the magazine, and you would need designers as well to make it, you know, make it all look good. Which is obviously the main focus of the magazine, is to have it be visually appealing while also being informative and entertaining. In terms of cost, I sort of used this pie chart here as well as an online tool to work out roughly how much it would cost based on the type of paper that I wanted to use and the number of issues. So for 5,000 issues, which is roughly what I was thinking to start off with, 5,000 copies per issue, it's looking at about £19,500, which is a relatively usual cost for magazines, and I think doing it bi-monthly is a good way of sort of like managing that cost well. I priced the magazine at £5 because that's roughly around what Bauer charged for their other magazines. I was looking at sort of their more niche magazines, like their fishing magazines and racing magazines and things like that. And they're all priced around £3.80 to £6. So I thought £5 was a good middle ground. It's not too unreasonable, especially for a bi-monthly magazine. And it means that the earnings on the magazine, if all of them sold, would result in a profit based on that figure. So yeah, and obviously there's a cost in terms of paying team members, which I would have to look into. So again, I think this is a big gap in the market in terms of an audience that doesn't typically interact with this kind of media. I think it's got an interesting mix that Bauer hasn't actually done before. I don't think Bauer has a technology magazine. It has sort of like the fashion magazines, a couple of gossip magazines, but it has a lot of niche interest magazines. So I feel like a tech magazine would fit right in there, but obviously they don't have one yet. So this is a good gap in terms of that. And because of its links with social media, I feel like it has potential to carry on past the initial magazine to hook people in and get people interacting and wanting to buy the next issue. So yeah, I think it's a unique idea, and I think it's a perfect fit for Bauer. Thank you.